Okay, so yesterday we did solve by taking square roots, but yesterday the problems we had, we could get them to we get them to the form like x squared equals 3 or x squared equals -8. So we could solve it that way. Today is going to be a little different. So today we're going to get to the form something like x plus or x minus 5 squared equals 2 or something like that. So we'll have like a whole something in parentheses squared equals a number. So those are two different times that you can do what we're doing today by solving by square roots. All right. So the first thing we're going to do, kind of like yesterday, is move everything away from what's being squared. Now, yesterday we moved it away from x squared. Today you're going to move it away from the quantity squared. Then, just like yesterday, we're going to take the square root to make sure we take the positive and negative square root. We're going to simplify the radical, and if it's negative, we're going to put an I. But this one has one more step that we have to solve for x, and that's just going to be just like adding something or subtracting something. So this one just has one extra step. Okay, so on number 1, our first step is to rewrite it so it's that something squared equals a number. And I already have that. So I have this thing squared equals a number. So I can skip to step 2 where we're going to take the square root of both sides. All right, and then just like yesterday, the square root that's on the side with the number, we're going to do the positive and negative square root. Okay, so on the the left side, the square root is just basically going to get rid of the square, and you're going to be left with what's underneath, which is just x plus 2. And then what is the square root of -81? Close. 9i. Okay, so that's what we did yesterday. And then today, one more step. At the end, we want to solve it for x, so we need to get rid of that 2. So since it's a plus 2, how do we get rid of it? -2. Good. Now, can you do 9i minus 2 and get like 7i? No, because they're not like terms. So when you can't combine them, then what you're going to do is just take that -2 and you stick it right in front of the plus or minus. And that's your answer. This is actually 2 answers. -2 plus 9i and -2 minus 9i. Okay. So it's a lot like yesterday, just one extra step at the end. All right, let's look at number 2. So same thing. We already have the first step done. So we can go ahead and go to step 2, which is to take the square root of both sides. And the square root will just cancel out the square. And then what's the square root of 49? What's the square root of 49? It's 7. Oh, I messed up. Is that what you were telling me? I don't know why my 3 turned into a 2. It's supposed to be 3. Sorry. All right. And then we want to solve this. So since it's a -3, what are we going to do with the 3? Add it. Now this is a little different. Can I add 3 to 7? Yeah. What am I going to get? It's 10. Can I add 3 to -7? Yes. and that's going to be -4. So this is different. We just get two answers, like 10 and -4, and that's it. Okay. Now, number 3 is the first one we actually need to do that first step. So because I have a 3 outside of the parentheses, I have to get rid of that first. So what do you think we need to do to get rid of that 3? Okay, I'm glad you said that. We actually cannot distribute inside parentheses that have a power. And that may have never came up before, but you can't. So let's divide by it. Good. So that leaves us with x minus 1 in parentheses with a square on the outside equals, and then 18 divided by 3 is 6. All right. So after that one step, now we're back doing pretty much exactly what we did on number 1 and 2. So we're ready to take the square root of both sides. And then the square root will just cancel out the square, and we're going to be left with x minus 1. So will the square root of 6 simplify? Like, is there a square other than 1 that goes into 6 evenly? There isn't. So we'll just leave it as the square root of 6. All right. And then we just have that one more step. So because this is an x minus 1, we're going to add 1. Now, can you add 1 to the square root of 6 and get like the square root of 7? You cannot. So that 1 is just going to go in front of the plus or minus. And then the square root of 6 is going to go after it. And those are your answers. 1 plus the square root of 6 and 1 minus the square root of 6. Okay, now all the rest of them, they're basically the same, but simplifying the radical is going to be a little bit harder. So at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and just write down some perfect squares that we're going to need today. There's more, but I think that's all we're really going to need. Right, so let's look at number 4. So number 4, the first step is already done. I just have something squared equals a number. So I'm ready for step 2, where we take the square root of both sides. Okay, so that square cancels, and we're just left with x minus 2. And we have our plus or minus. And then because this has a negative, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the I. And then 32 does have some squares that divide evenly into it, but we want, bless you, we want to find the largest. So what do you guys think the largest square is that divides evenly into 32? Yes. So 32 is 16 times 2. Okay. So I am going to find the square root of 16, which is just 4. So it's going to be positive and negative 4i, and then that 2 stays underneath the square root. So getting the order right, sometimes it get kind of tricky. All right. Then I'm going to move that 6 over. Because it's a minus, I'm going to add it. And because of the I and the square root, I can't actually add them together. So I'll just put the 6 in front of the plus or minus. All right. Okay. The rest of these are pretty much the same thing. So let's look at number 5. What would you guys do first on number 5? Divide. So we're going to divide by that -2. And that's just going to cancel it out and leave you with the x plus 7 squared on the left. And then on the right, it's just going to be 20. Okay. So once I do that, once there's nothing outside of my parentheses besides the square, we can do the square root of both sides. So that'll cancel that out. All right. Do I need to worry about I on this one? No. So there's only an I if there's a negative under the square root. There's not. So I do need to find a square that goes into 20. And 4 will divide evenly into 20. Okay. So the square root of 4 is just 2. And then the 5 stays under the square root. And then we'll just move over that 7 by subtracting it. Okay. And those are our answers. All right, I'm going to get you guys started on number 6. Just because of that negative kind of hanging out on the front looks kind of weird. You might not really know what to do with it. Let me get you started and let's kind of let you do it, finish it on your own. All right, so I can't do the square root yet because I have this outside of my parentheses. So how can I get rid of that negative? You just change the signs, you're right. So you can just change the signs, make it a positive and make the 75 a negative. Or some people like to just divide by -1. However you want to do it, it's fine. What's inside doesn't change, but that negative cancels out. And you're left with x plus 4 squared equals -75. All right, so you guys finish this one on your own, please. So if you're looking for squares that divide into 75, because it's odd, you really only have to check odd numbers. Some of them are too big. So the one that does divide evenly is 25. All right, and then the square root of 25 is 5. And then we'll just move that 4 over. But when it moves over, it becomes negative. And it just goes right in front of the plus or minus. All right, I'm just going to skip down and do 9. And if you guys want to see some more examples, I can do some, but they're all pretty much the same. But I want to do 9 because 9 has a fraction, and sometimes fractions make people a little nervous. I don't want it to. So with a fraction, you have an option to either, if you know the decimal for that fraction, you can use the decimal, or you can divide by the fraction. So on number 9, the fraction we need to divide by is 3/4. So these are your options. You can do negative 96 divided by, and to get a fraction, it's alpha y equals 3/4. And that will work every time. What is 3/4 as a decimal? Yeah. So if you prefer to use decimal, type it in. It works out the same way both ways. Those are your options. If you're using a calculator to do it. Now, if it was a non-calculator, you'd want to multiply by the reciprocal, but I don't think they're going to put this on the non-calculator part of the test. Not one with a fraction. All right, so then we'll do the square root. Right, because this is a negative 128, we are going to pull out an I. Right, and 128 has several squares that divide evenly into it. So we always want the largest. The largest is 64. So 64, 16, and 4 all divide evenly into 64. But the largest is 64, so it's 64 times 2. We're going to find our square root of 64, which is 8. And we'll write it in front of the I, and the square root of 2 after the I. And then last step, we'll subtract that 3. That's it. All right, what questions do you guys have? If you're good at simplifying square roots, this is probably not going to be a major deal. If you're still struggling with that, it might take you a little while. All right, so I do have the answers to your assignment. The assignment's on the back. I have them right here, so you can check as you go. You have to show your work, and your work needs to make sense for you to get credit, but you can check.